What's going on, everybody? Welcome to this stream, to this little history chat. Of course, it's Brian Scarborough here, Fixed Air Moon, keeping the collective fixed on astrology. Definitely having like some Mercury retrograde issues trying to go live here. So if you saw like things pop up and then disappear, my bad. I'm trying my best. So today I just wanted to kind of talk about this eclipse a little bit, talk about Mars in Leo and the aspects it's making to Uranus, to Saturn, and kind of go back in history of a lot of these transits that we are seeing right now and try to make sense of them. We're in these changeable times. We're in uncertain times with Uranus getting ready to square Saturn again exact next week on the 14th. So it's very, ratcheted up energy, and Mars in Leo is going to make a big T square, opposing Saturn and squaring over to Uranus. So there's some heavy, heavy energy, and I think this is really the catalyst for 2021. So, just wanted to talk about it, go over some stuff. I got some charts, I got some sites pulled up, and just gonna kind of run down and then give a little bit about what I think this means in the end. So if you like history and you like astrology, you may just enjoy this talk, or it'll trigger you and you won't like it at all. Whatever. So be it. So we'll just jump into this. I will share with you my computer screen. I even put myself in the corner because I can do that. And we'll jump into it. So the first thing here is we kind of start off like we go back to the last time we saw this eclipse, because we're having this. I guess I could talk about the eclipse for a second. We're having this solar eclipse on Thursday, early morning on Thursday, depending on where you are, June 10th. And it's a big one in Gemini, and it's changing the way we think. And it's part of, a sorrow cycle, an eclipse cycle that came back around. It was these same nodal positions with the North Node in Gemini, South Node in Sagittarius in 2002. And there was, heavy aspects to Saturn. There was Neptune squaring these nodes. Well, that was 2012 with the nodes flipped. But there was a lot of similarities, and we start to see we still see these harder aspects. So I want to jump into those with you, because I think that this eclipse is when we start to see a lot of change. It's kind of like the catalyst for 2021, where it really has been kind of, I don't want to say it's been chill. There's plenty of stuff going on, but not like what we're about to see, and kind of what I intuitively, as well as going over the charts and the history, astrologically feel we're going to see. So it's a little bit of both. And then this Mars in Leo transit is the other igniting factor that's about to take place. We're going to see that ingress on Friday. So, well, buckle up. Let's go for a little trip. Let's see where things might be going. Take a trip down memory road. And that's a better intro, I suppose. So I'm kind of starting here February 14th, 2002, sorry. Or August 14th. Mercury retrograde's got me all spun up. Oh, what's up, Putin? It's funny, Putin popped up there because he's kind of going to come up in this a couple times that I've noticed, and Russia comes up, and the United States comes up a bunch too. So there's this sort of theme with America, Russia, and also Germany. And then we kind of go into the Great Depression. We go into the Civil War a little bit. We go into a lot of those things. And I think, first of all, we'll go back over here to the iPad that, for whatever reason, doesn't want to work. But it will eventually work. There we go. So this is the first chart that I have brought up here. And it is for this August of 2002. And why I was looking at this chart is because we're seeing this North Node in Gemini. We're also seeing Saturn in Gemini, which is definitely a different shift. But we got this Mars in Leo. And that Mars in Leo is in opposition to Uranus. So we're seeing there's going to be themes here. Themes around Mars in Leo, hard aspects to Uranus, hard aspects to Saturn, Saturn-Uranus aspects. So it's these three planets that, I've been digging up information and like going back and seeing what was coming and kind of like trying to link it to where we're at now and try to make some sense of it. So that's where this is going as well. So we're seeing this opposition to Uranus. And Uranus is unpredictable, especially strong here in Aquarius. And we were seeing a lot of change take place in 2000, late 2000, 2001, 2002. That was, of course, right before we saw the 9/11 in the United States. This changed travel forever with the TSA, with the South Node in Sag. So, and it's with Pluto there, funny enough. So that's kind of where that's going. And when I link it back over to, the dates of what was going on, we do see Putin pop up. And we're just going to see more of that. And not so much that this event is of particular interest, but as we go down here and we look at these interests, we see the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, which we're seeing right now. So we're seeing a replay of this conflict play out in a big way in the world. And there's a lot of that, there's war vibes to where we're at now too. So I think that we kind of want to like brace ourselves for the unpredictable. Like we might think things are just chill, but I think we're going to start to see more things ramp up when it comes to that. We also see the United States Food and Drug Administration recall all soft tissues processed, and this was like for implant tissues, which is interesting because it happens to be in red, highlighted implant. And call it what you want, what's getting jabbed into arms. Is there an implant going on? So interesting to just consider, we're going to use our hermetic mind today. We're going to just look at both sides. We're coming up on eclipse in Gemini. We're in Gemini season, North Node's here. We're just going to question things. It's good to ask questions and just to see where things might make sense. So I'm not trying to, if I say something, it's not even that I'm trying to push one side or the other. I'm just trying to go with what I'm seeing. So hopefully that makes sense too. So we're seeing that causes serious infections and a death. So not a huge deal, of course. We're talking about implants, but still something that popped up. Also, another big thing with this transit, and this is part of the same Saros cycle for the eclipse cycle that we're in, was a lot of extreme weather. So we're seeing that now. Like we've already started to see that this year. And the first Saturn-Uranus square really was a catalyst for a lot of what happened in Texas and that during that Aquarius season, and there was really cold temperature. Like we're seeing changes in weather. So that's a part of sort of the prediction is like we are going to see some intense and extreme weather as we're seeing our magnetic poles shifting, as we're seeing the earth flare or the sun flaring, even Uranus is flaring. We're seeing planets in the cosmos. They are shifting there's wild stuff going on in the cosmos. And if you're into Hermeticism, it's as above, so below. It is the macrocosm in the cosmos we are the microcosm playing that out down here. So we're seeing all these big shifts within just the planetary bodies, the planetary gods. And it's no coincidence that we're going to start seeing more of this on Earth as the poles are shifting, as weather's changing. And you know what? It's not because of our carbon footprint. I'm sorry. Like this is way bigger than us. Like that's the thing is everybody wants to make it look like humans are the cause of all destruction and killing people. It's really not. It's bigger. This is divine. It's going on way outside of our control. So I hate to break it to people. The climate's not changing because of a diesel truck on the road. Like I'm sorry. Or your coal mines. It's changing because of magnetic shifts. And that's just truth. So lots of weather, lots of extreme shifts. And that's one of the main themes that I saw from that last square. It wasn't so much of a war thing as it was extreme shift and weather. And it also changed travel. And there was, and we're seeing travel change now. It's just not, The world is not open like it once was. And a lot of that is Pluto, Jupiter, which met in Capricorn, which is restricting us. And that's the 13-year cycle. The last one was, of course, in Sagittarius. It was an open playground. The world was you could go wherever you want, do whatever you want. Now we're in a more restricted time, and we're going to see that come into play more and more as well. So that's part of a little bit of the prediction stuff too. So the next one that I went to was 1978, and the chart for that is, again, it's in May of 1978. We're going to see Mars back in Leo, Saturn in Leo, and we're seeing squares to Uranus, but this time in the opposite sign of Scorpio. So again, we're getting this theme of Mars and Uranus, and Mars is the god of war. Mars brings action, assertion, it can be dominance, power, and even Saturn was squaring Uranus at this time too, over these few years here in the late 70s. So what did we see in the history? We go and we look at May, and we start to see communist activism. Communist activist is murdered. We are seeing a lot of people pushing socialism right now, which is in many ways like the gateway to communism. But again, I'm not here to tell people what to believe. I'm not here to say that capitalism is the shit. I think it gives us opportunity. Socialism kind of is about control, and it only gives you so much you can do. And maybe some people like that, and I'm not going to judge that. But we start to see that kind of come up. And then what was interesting that just caught my eye and I was extremely guided to around this time was at that very same time that we have this chart for May 13th, where we see this Mars square Uranus, we get this Bob Denard fellow. And I don't know why, I just had to look and see what was up with him. And I think the big reason was because I read this. It was like Denard forms a new government. And I was thinking, because I already know in the back of my head we're seeing a Pluto return next year for the United States of America. So I think that's what caught my eye and had me go deeper into Bob Denard. So Bob Denard was basically a mercenary and a French soldier. So he was just a warrior, which is Mars related too, and definitely he attempted a lot of coups. He was like the coup guy. So interesting too. We go back and, well, what do we have this year? You could say, some people would say it was an insurrection or an attempted coup or whatever you want to call it. I think it was a show, if I'm being honest, but that's just my opinion. But it was nonetheless had that appearance to it. So we're going to just go off that of what it, was portrayed as. A sort of coup or insurrection or whatever. So the most active he was in this, the Comoros, which I could be saying that wrong. Comoros. I'm not completely sure how to say that. But what he did was he ousted their first president, Ahmed Abdallah, who had unilaterally proclaimed the Comoros independence on the 6th of July. Ahmad Abdallah was replaced by Ali Saleh. So then this guy, Denard, comes back and he failed a coup in Benin, and he ends up heading back. He returned to the Comoros with 43 men on the 13th of May, 1978, which is when I pulled up that chart, and carried out a coup against that new president, Ali Saleh. Again, I'm not very good at pronouncing names, so I apologize if that's just the best I can do. Who had turned toward socialist policies. So again, we're seeing that socialist thing come up. So there was a coup by Denard. Saleh was killed under a mysterious circumstance on the 29th of May. I guess the story gets blurry. They say he was shot trying to escape. I saw another article that said he committed suicide. Not really sure what happened with him. But anyways, this gave Denard, he ended up getting Ahmed Abdallah back in presidency, and Denard headed his presidential guard. So I think that that's interesting as well. And then he adopted the Islamic faith. And the Comoros also served as a logistic base for military operations, blah, blah, blah. Anyways, lots of coups. So brought up what we've already seen to this point. Very interesting because the former president of the Comoros was reinstated. It was, of course, Ahmed Abdallah, and then he came back in after Ali Sorry, can't pronounce it. I'm not gonna sit here and like be like, yo, because there's already been that, like you've seen maybe on the news, like Trump is coming out saying he's gonna retake the presidency. I don't know if that's true, and honestly, I don't really care about either of them being our president if you're in the United States. I just personally don't. I would rather some like big, new, much younger presence come into leadership than these two men. I used to like Trump a little bit more, I'll be honest, but with his push of the jab, I'm not like the biggest fan of that, like that push to make people do something. If people want to do something, by all means, go do it. But sort of like that, getting in people's emotions to go do it. Like I don't really vibe with that presence that has been coming out lately. For whatever it's worth, I'm not necessarily here to say that Trump's going to take back office, but we're going to start getting into a little bit of Biden in this too, and how the eclipses run through parts of Russia, parts of the United States at some of the more intense place. You know, not so much that the most intense part of the eclipse hits those places, but it hits little pieces. And so this is where I'm a little jaded on it, because it's not like going through like really intense like core places, although it does go through New York with a pretty substantial, you know, what would be the word? Intensity, if you will. So we're definitely seeing the United States and Russia start to come up. And this goes into the next thing that I wanted to talk about, which was, I guess first we'll jump to Biden, and then I'll go back to the other one. So Russia, United States, they're having a summit, and I believe it's on the 16th, which is 2 days after Saturn and Uranus make their exact square again. Very interesting to see this summit take place. Especially right now with the way those eclipses are hitting, and with where even the transits are hitting Biden, because I believe his Pluto, which is his 12th house ruler, is at 7 degrees of Leo, and Mars is approaching that. Uranus has squared it. Saturn's going to come back and oppose it when it stations direct. So definitely a lot is hitting Joe Biden right now, President Joe Biden, if you will. And this is an interesting event here. This is I think that, you know, in these times where we're seeing uncertainty and where we're seeing sort of, like I mentioned, a resurrection of maybe a former president or a new one. And then this goes into the Jupiter-Saturn cycles too. So I'm not just saying from that, I'm saying that Trump's going to come back, or that a new president's going to come into office. And you know what? It could be Kamala Harris. I mean, she's been doing most of the heavy lifting in the presidency right now anyways, from what I've seen, is that she's the one out there doing most of the talking with other foreign leaders. So I think this is a big one for President Biden, just because it seems like Kamala's been doing more of that, and he's meeting with Putin, who is an absolute, you know, heavyweight when it comes to foreign leadership. Interesting to see where that goes. I think that's definitely something to pay attention to, and could be where we start to see this catalyst of unpredictability and things that people may have never thought were going to come into play, start to come into play. I'm going to come back to that a little bit, but first I want to go to JFK, because JFK was inaugurated in 1961 on a Jupiter Saturn. So this is when JFK was inaugurated. Jupiter Saturn conjunct in Capricorn, which when Joe Biden got elected this year, they were both in Capricorn and they were conjunct. And they did move to 0 Aquarius for the actual conjunction, and for Joe Biden's inauguration, they were in Aquarius too. But interesting to see that come back to Capricorn. And I do want to say that, I'm not making this stuff up. Like, there's track record, there's history to back this stuff up. This isn't like the best aspect for presidents. It's just, you go back in history, and 1840, William Henry Harrison died of pneumonia. So it's not always like an assassination, although that does seem to be a theme here as well. Abraham Lincoln, James Garfield, William McKinley, FDR, and of course John F. Kennedy, that final one. And that was that chart that we were just looking at. So again, I do not want to sit here and predict necessarily that there is a death coming. That's not exactly how I work. But the last two, I think it's worth noting too, with George W. Bush in 2000 under Jupiter Saturn in Taurus, and 1980 with the previous Jupiter Saturn, which was Ronald Reagan. They both did have assassination attempts. Reagan got shot in his rib, I believe, ricocheted off a car when he was getting into his limo, hospitalized, pretty close to death. So there was an attempt on Reagan in the 80s. There was an attempt on George Bush a few times in George Bush's life. And of course, just for laughs, there is always the joke with George W. Bush that he was already brain dead when he got into office. So, ha ha ha. Anyways, it's not the esteemed planetary transit for United States presidents. I am just putting the facts and the history out there. So the way things are lining up, just seems like a pivotal time. And with Mars in Leo and these eclipses where information and change is going to come out left and right, it'll be interesting to see what it is and what sort of change is coming and what sort of earth-shattering events are coming too with Uranus square Saturn. And are we going to have realities just completely shattered? The presidency was such a big deal in the United States over the last year. I've never seen anything like it. Like, people were all in for their political party, like all chips in. And it was almost like, maybe because sports were kind of shut down, that like politics became like the top tier sporting event almost. It's pretty wild, like, looking back at it. So how much of that's carrying over? I mean, you see a lot of it now. There's still a lot of political stuff that goes on the daily. So that could be something that shatters realities for many people. So I just wanted to bring that up because it seems relevant for the times we're living in currently. This is the chart of Kennedy. What is the chart tonight? Oh, here we are. The Cuban Missile Crisis. October 20th, 1962. So here we are again, this Russia and United States thing. That's kind of been this theme that I noticed through these transits. And what's interesting about the 1962 chart that I just had up here is, well, look at this. Mars in Leo. Again, working on a square to Neptune. Uranus is at 4 degrees. And quincunx Saturn. So again, we're seeing a hard aspect between Uranus and Saturn. A weird one, 150 degree angle. And then we're seeing Mars in exact opposition to Saturn. So it was this Cuban Missile Crisis. This was Russia, apparently getting in with Fidel Castro in Cuba, right? Getting missiles down there to possibly plan an attack. And it was a big deal. I wasn't alive for it. I haven't done too much history on it, but the idea was that they had to have secret, intelligence briefings, and it was a big deal for, it was a big scare for a lot of people when these things started coming out, that there was potential, warfare on the horizon, which was settled. It did get settled and it didn't happen. So, it would take a long time to achieve the objective. These were the disadvantages of blocking it. It would result in serious political trouble for the United States, which maybe we're in serious political trouble right now. The United States might appear to be weakened or weakening, cause trouble with allies. And, I would say that as of the recent history, I mean, you could say what you want about elections and stuff, or if that's even true, about Russia intervening, but they've kind of been an ally to us. And I'm curious to see if that continues. So, a lot of this Cuban Missile Crisis. So it seems like, we could be seeing some sort of event too, where it's like, is it a false flag? This was in some ways a false flag. Like, it was almost like where the Cold War, right, like really became a world war, but it didn't. So maybe we see something like that as well, where we're in this place where there's this big shock scare factor, and we are seeing in this chart Saturn in Aquarius, which is where Saturn's at now and where Mars is at now, and making weird aspects to Uranus, while Uranus and Mars are making a semi-sextile, which is a weird aspect in itself, like 30 degrees, like they're in an aspect, but they don't really see each other. It's like this blind spot. And Uranus, is the people as well. And so interesting enough to look at. And then we're seeing a lot of Neptune squares right now too. So it's interesting to see Neptune and Scorpio squaring that Mars, Leo, and squaring the nodes at that time, which we've been seeing a lot of that too. So it's interesting to consider that we might see another sort of, it could be a war scare, it could be actual, sort of war stuff going on, but we have some other stuff on that too. Where did I have, oh, okay. So this chart's of 1940, and it's in August, and basically what was going on in 1940 was really the start of, like, World War II was getting ramped up, especially with the Germans, and they were starting to launch air raids. So we come back to this war theme again, and we see Mars in Leo, we see Uranus back in Taurus, in square, but we don't see Saturn making any crazy aspects, although it is a Jupiter-Saturn year with them in conjunction in Taurus as well. So Saturn's not, it did get squared by Mars though. So there was that. So there's more hard aspects between Uranus, Saturn, and Mars here that was leading to a lot of the beginning of World War II, like a lot of bombs dropping, a lot of Japanese really getting into it. Like it was happening. So John Lennon was born. That was a big deal. That's a little out of order. Not so much. So the next thing would be Pearl Harbor, which was December 7th, 1941. We look at the chart for Pearl Harbor, and we start to see Mars in Aries. Now, Mars in Aries is interesting because this was the year that Mars, it was 1941, that Mars last retrograded in Aries, and the full stayed in for the full duration of the retrograde, just like we saw this last year where Mars came into Aries, retrograded in Aries, stayed there, and then came back out. And it was that final day of Aries that we saw that insurrection act at the Capitol at 29 degrees of Aries. So very interesting to kind of come back into that and look at where things could be heading. And Pearl Harbor was an interesting one too, because we had all our troops there. We had people like paying attention, but they almost like got sleepy. They weren't paying attention, and when they got the call that things were coming, they were like, "Oh yeah, we're paying attention," and then they weren't, and they got caught off guard, and it was a big deal. And that was when the United States really, really got into it, of course. And then, heavy times. So again, we're seeing the United States get into the war, into those aspects. And what else do we see? We see Saturn and Uranus in conjunction in Taurus. So again, we're seeing these three make a lot of aspects to each other during these moments. So then I'm going to go back. Actually, I'm going to talk about Jesse Owens because I want to lighten things up a little bit. So there was the Olympics in 1936, and they were in, of course, Germany. They were the Berlin Olympics. And it was Hitler. I mean, it was Hitler's show. He wanted to show off his Germans as just this masterful human creation, top tier, and really, it was about that Aryan racial superiority and all of that. And Jesse Owens, a badass, just came into that place, into Nazi Germany, and really stole the show. And I think that that's very cool. And if we look at the chart, what do we see? Well, we get Mars in Leo, square Uranus, and we see Saturn, in Pisces. So we were seeing Mars end up quincunxing that Saturn, and we were seeing Uranus and Saturn, Saturn before that time sextiling. So not as heavy of an aspect as we're seeing now, but it is still that Mars in Leo square Uranus in Taurus. But what's awesome really about these Olympics was Jesse Owens and how he came in. And I think this is a good look at how Jesse Owens represents the light workers, if you ask me, in this time that we're in right now. Because I think the light workers almost are like the underdog that, the rest of the world doesn't talk about, but it's like that light and being able to hold your ground and hold your own against whatever the world's going through right now is so important. And that's how you're going to, start to win these events in life and start to get through this. So I think Jesse Owens is, with these aspects that played out and coming across those, it was just cool to see, because it ended up being that, Adolf Hitler didn't shake his hand by the end of the games, but the German fans ended up cheering for him. And Jesse Owens even claimed that Hitler, did actually wave to him as well because he was so impressed. So there's this idea of really holding your value, holding your worth, and showing up and doing the work, and not, looking adversity in the face and just owning yourself, owning who you are, and going out there and doing the best you can. So I think there's a lot of that too right now, is holding that light, holding yourself to a high level within yourself and not getting lost in a lot of this crazy stuff that's going to go on, because a lot of it is actually most likely, in my opinion, and I'm going to come to a chart later, more of an illusion than not. I think it's more scare tactic, but at the same time, we could definitely see things ratchet up to another level that we haven't seen in a long time. But I think if we kind of channel that Jesse Owens within us and go into whatever's coming, this unpredictable environment, this stable environment in life, and we go, rock the show for ourselves, and we start, leveling up with our own individuality and winning our events in our own personal life, dope. So came across these transits when I was doing some of this work and wanted to share that as well. And then let's see what's over here. What was next? October 12th, 1931. What did I have going on in 1931? That's a good question. I have going on in 1931? Well, let's look at the chart, because I don't know if I have a tab open for what I want to talk about with this, and I can't seem to remember what it was. Maybe this chart's just out of place, but let's see what's up. So we're seeing Saturn in Capricorn squaring Uranus, and we're also seeing a T-square to Mercury and the Sun, and we're seeing Mars in Scorpio. All right, let's have some fun. October 12th, 1931, because there was probably something going on. (1931) was during the Great Depression as well, so that was a big thing. I don't know why I brought this chart up. There was probably something going on that caught my eye, but I'm not going to waste your time if I can't figure it out right now. So it must not be that important. All right, so now we're going way back in time. We're going to go back to October of 1855, 1853. We're seeing what was the crime. I don't even know how to pronounce this in all honesty. Crimean War, which was really a holy war between Russia. Again, Russia comes up, the United Kingdom comes up, France. It seemed like it really involved like the church and, people's faith, which we were seeing Neptune and Pisces back then. So it became this big war that, the more I read into it, it just seemed like it was a very confusing war. I need a history professor because I do not have all that time to go through all this stuff. But basically, if I find what I'm looking for, it was the greater confusion of purpose. Notoriously incompetent international butchery. Where is the immediate cause of the war involved the rights of Christian minorities in the Holy Land and part of the Ottoman Empire. The French promoted the rights of the Catholic Church, while Russia promoted Eastern Orthodox Church. So it was a battle of the churches. It was a holy war. And if we look at the chart, we see that we're having Neptune, which we've been living through Neptune in these later degrees. Neptune's now at, of course, 23 degrees of Pisces and in that third decan. But we were in that second decan for a long time, and even last year. So interesting. And what we also saw was, again, happened to be a Mars in Leo square. What's interesting too about this time frame, these 1850s, is it was the same time that we had Uranus and Neptune in these signs. Uranus in Taurus, Neptune in Pisces. And what's even crazier is Jupiter came into Pisces as well. So in a lot of ways, there's a lot of linkage back to where we're at now of really the spiritual war, this holy war, spiritual war of your sovereignty, your faith. What do you believe in? Do you believe in, beliefs go from every part of the spectrum, right? Like some people believe science is everything. Science is the key. Science is what you should follow. Other people believe in maybe just their feelings or their intuition or the divine. Especially I would say the divine right now is everything. But this is the last time that we saw both Jupiter and Neptune in Pisces. And it was also, not only was this holy war that was fought on the other side of the world in Europe, but we were seeing the is this This is more on the Crimean War. We were seeing a great split in the United States with Bleeding Kansas and anti-slavery versus pro-slavery. So there was this big split in different ways between churches and also sovereignty, which is Uranus and Taurus, is trying to liberate through personal values. The war arose from the Middle East and was more directly caused by Russian demands to exercise protection over Orthodox subjects. Yeah. It was a holy war. This is a big one too, because this doesn't get talked about enough, but I do want to give credit to David Palmer, the Leo King. He's been talking about this for a long time and kind of brought it to my attention, so definitely credit him for getting into this. I don't know, I haven't seen any other astrologers do it, but I have seen him do it, so credit there. And this is that same time that we're seeing this 1855, 1854, Mars squared Uranus, but more importantly, Uranus in Taurus and Neptune in Pisces, and then Jupiter coming into Pisces. And Bleeding Kansas, if you're not familiar, it is a period of repeated outbreaks of violent guerrilla warfare between pro-slavery and anti-slavery forces following the creation of the new territory of Kansas in 1854. In all, some 55 people were killed between 1855 and 1859. This was what brought on the Civil War in many ways. And it was all over the slavery, and it was the Kansas-Nebraska Act. So this was a big deal because Kansas wanted to have free soilers and have freedom and, anti-slavery. But of course the South wanted slavery. What's interesting is that the Kansas-Nebraska Act divided Douglas' Democratic Party and inspired the formation of the Republican Party, which opposed extending slavery. Like, it was the Republican Party that... That's why it seems so weird right now. It really was the Republican Party that wanted freedom. And you kind of see that now when you look out there and, you get labeled a conspiracy theorist or a Trumper or a Q supporter if you think that people should have their own rights to do what they want to do. And you're not following the line and the rule, and you look at like liberal, like the definition, and democratic, and it's like it's about freedom and liberating, but that's not what you see or at least that's not what I see when I look at a lot of the things in that party right now. And I'm not a Democrat or a Republican, I'm just going off what I see. So crucify me on the stake, whatever you need to do. I'm just going off what I see, and I don't really classify myself as either or. So it's interesting to see that, and this brought up the struggle over elections, which is a subject nobody wants to talk about either. Or people do want to talk about it, but nobody wants to really, look at history and look at astrology, except for the Leo King, of course. He does a great job of putting that message out there. So this was where there were thousands of pro-slavery Missourians flooded into the new territory in Kansas to double vote. And it was a rigged election. So the pro-slavery candidate easily defeated the free soiler candidate. Which you look at our election now is like, oh, biggest election landslide in the history of ever. It's just wow, history replayed itself. And, and now we're starting to see these places recount things. And it's like, what's going to come up with that? I don't know. But what happened in this, too, was that they knew it was rigged, but they let it go because it was causing so much blood. It was causing so much war. So to kind of try and put an end to it, they actually just let it slide. So very interesting with this North Node in Gemini, what is going to come out What information is going to come out that's going to start making big waves in our physical world, in the outer world. And I think, a lot of it, like the light right now is in Gemini, of course, the North Node, the eclipse, all that we're living through. And even with the North Node's transits going through Leo or even Virgo over the past, decade, Virgo, Leo, Cancer, and now Gemini, and then Taurus next year. Like, we're getting our inner world right. Like, those are all our personal, areas of the zodiac. So we're trying to get right within ourselves and get a good foundation within ourselves, because the outer world is, with the South Node that's been transiting up there, it is so much of this, like, it's not going to take you where you need to go right now. Like, right now, we're supposed to be leveling up from within. So I do want to put that out there. It's like, we don't want to get too caught up in this stuff, but at the same time, we want to look at it still and, like, just take in what information we can find and, like, think about it. You don't have to adopt it if you hate it. I'm not going to try and indoctrinate anybody to believe any specific thing, but it's history, astrology, and through the attention of Kansas has waned after 1855. Sporadic violence continued, including murder of a group of free staters, along with 58, Temper Turner Brown, led to a raid to liberate a group of enslaved people in the winter of 1858-1859. Brown's role in the violence in Kansas helped him raise money for a raid on Harper's Ferry. So Brown was a big deal. He ended up getting executed and became a martyr. But the North celebrated him, or the South celebrated his death, and the North, he became sort of a hero in the North too. So interesting seeing these planets line up with such a big time in history, and seeing a lot of the things that we're seeing in our reality right now, but they're sensitive subjects, and we do have Neptune in Pisces, so it is sensitive. It's like uber sensitive times, and there's a lot of projection, a lot of media projection of what to do and what not to do, and it's programming, and that's a lot of what Neptune is doing now. And we didn't even really know about Neptune back in the 1850s. Like, it was just discovered. It wasn't really part of our collective consciousness where it is now. It's like definitely this higher spiritual meaning, but also this delusion. So there's this, I see it on social media if I scroll around a little bit, which I don't do very often these days, but people on both sides call the other side delusional. Like, everybody's delusional if they don't have the same belief, if they're not getting force-fed the same information. And that's the thing too, is like with media, this is social media, all sorts of anything from a black screen. And with the algorithms out there, like there was that movie on Netflix, The Social Network. Or not The Social Network, that was the Facebook one. It was what was it, The Social Dilemma or something? I don't know. It was about the algorithms out there and how they force feed you what you want to see. So it's like, if you start to search a certain thing or get in one side and only one side, like, you're going to keep getting force fed that over and over and over again, to the point where, you're officially programmed to that one side. And it doesn't matter which side it is, whether it's the right, the left, the up, the down, whatever, like, you're going to get that, and it's just going to become more and more engraved and programmed into your conscious. So I think we want to be aware of that too. Those are facts that are out there. So we have to be careful with that stuff, I think, too, when we're trying to see both sides of stuff. And that's what this eclipse in Gemini is going to try and help us rewrite our mind about, and show us how to look at things more objectively and look at truth and make smart decisions and make quick changes to have a better environment for ourselves. Dun, 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 dun. This is Uranus. I put in Uranus in Taurus the whole time that it was in Uranus in Taurus. So from 1850 to, it was actually like, I think it was 50 to 58, but it came up with this. So I was just kind of like going through things that happened with Uranus and Taurus. And of course, the stuff that we already talked about, we're things that already, that were popped up again. And very interesting. And Neptune in Pisces was, gold rush too, 1849 in California. So there's still like, I still think there's this gold out there, but we have to really alchemize it within ourselves. We have to find like our truth and our authenticity and how we liberate ourselves and turn ourselves into like this very conscious and precious material by connecting it to the divine. And I think that that's the gold rush right now more than anything, is not so much about the money and stuff, which is going to get weird. I think that if we go back to Uranus and Taurus in the 30s, that was, the Great Depression as well. So I think we see more of that, and I think we see that sort of Great Depression stuff where, stock market is going to crash. And that's where I was talking about the eclipses, and I'll show that next. This is where the eclipse on June 10th, like this pink part's the most intense part, and it, just touches the United States. But it is through Russia. I don't even think there's much over there in Russia, to be honest, but it is Russia nonetheless. And we do see like the second most intense wave of this come through New York. So I don't know. I think that we're in this really strange place with supply and demand. And, we're in this really strange place with supply and demand. And, I think it would be smart to have enough goods that you really, would like to have kind of stashed away just in case. I'm not saying like doomsday prep, but I don't think it would hurt anybody if you could go out and get at least like a month or two worth of like something that you could live off of if you needed to, if supply got cut. Because we're already starting to see inflation come up. We're seeing gas come up. We're seeing a lot of the stuff from the pandemic start to play out in our consumer goods. And that's why I would say that like we might be coming into another Great Depression era right now. And if we are, with the way these transits do look, it would probably be harsher because we're so used to having so much stuff. Where back then, like, yeah, they had some stuff, but they don't have stuff like we have stuff. So, and there's a lot, I would say there's more people on the planet now too that want stuff. So, the stuff you really need, the stuff you really value. And I think that North Node coming into Taurus is going to bring some of that to light, like really making sure you're manifesting and bringing in stuff that you really do hold, it really does hold value in your life. It really does hold worth. And more importantly, you holding worth, like yourself, and believing that within yourself. So interesting to see where this eclipse hits. Again, it's Russia, United States, Canada, and it does go through New York, which is our economic center, if you will, in the United States. So just things to pay attention for. I don't know what the best situation would be. I think metals, kind of going back to how I talked about the gold rush, I think metals could be a great thing to store value in. It's really hard to get silver right now, and gold, of course, is much more expensive. But again, not trying to sit here and tell people to doomsday prep, but stuff to consider. And if you start seeing shit hit the fan, it could be too late. They're already calling silver unobtainium, physical silver, which is wild because it's so manipulated on the stock market. And in the indexes that it's still like cheap if you buy paper, if you buy contracts to, play on leverage or whatever. But physical silver is extremely hard to come by right now. And it's almost like that price is much more than even what you would see on like the COMEX or whatever. So, values. It's a big deal. What I'm going to have next? What was this? Oh, yeah. Kind of going into that stock market crash. So that was the short depression, but this was talking about the Great Depression, which kind of started from that 1929 and it didn't end until 1946 after World War II. So it was a big deal in our economy, and I think that we're seeing economy go through that kind of thing again. And look at this Come on, man. I don't know why this cable does it to me. It's like I want to blame Mercury retrograde, but it's probably just a bad cable. This is the U.S. Sibley chart for the 4th of July, 1976. So this would be the United States natal chart. I like the Sibley chart. I think it makes the most sense. There's other ones with different rising signs out there, but I like this one. And I think I would say it's the most popular. Regardless of the rising sign, we get Pluto at 27 degrees. We're going to see Pluto making that Pluto return February 20th, 2022. Okay. That's something, right? Like the exact conjunction, all twos. It's 5 twos, which makes a 10. So I would say that not only is this in a very emotional time as we're going through this rewriting, Pluto is a complete system reboot when it comes back around. It takes 248 years. I mean, we're going to see the United States, which isn't the whole world, of course, but it is it's a democracy leader. You know, we started that and we pushed that, and other places have adopted it. And it's even interesting to see that the midheaven's ruled by Libra. And of course, this Porphyry chart, and even Saturn in Libra, like to find fairness, like that was the mission. But it's at this 1 degree, and it's like very young, so it's like we'll never totally find out how to balance things here, but like that's the mission, and we're always going to start evolving to try and make it better, but it's like we're going to get out of balance and have to balance back out. But Pluto's rewriting the whole story, you know, it's the great system reboot. It's like the United States hasn't had a system update like on my computer here, like in 248 years. It's dusty. It's old. That update's probably going to crash it. It's been that long, right? So that's what we see with Pluto, right? Death and rebirth. And a lot of what we've come to see over the last 248 years and what we've come to, and I think this goes into our governments, this goes into a lot of these structures in life. It's not going to be the same. So we're starting to see these transformations come now, and I think it's this year, and I think it's these eclipses and this Mars that are really this catalyst moving forward. And I think that it does kind of show up in ways of war. I think it shows up with shortages and food and money and stock market. I think the stock market's going to get hit. And I don't know what's going to happen with crypto. Usually when the stock market gets hit, crypto gets hit too. But at this point, there's a chance that crypto's kind of proven itself to be a worthy store of value. There is this, I don't even know if it could be a pipe dream, but it could be a chance that if the stock market takes a hit, crypto takes a big rise. But that's a hard one to predict. And, you know, we'll see. But this is a big time. We're in big time. This is that's why we have this node. It's no coincidence that we have this node coming through these personal energies over these last few years, because we have to get ourselves right from within to go through this mission. And you know what? We truly did come here to go through this, and we came here to shine that light. And I'm glad that Jesse Owens story did come up, because I think that that's where so many of us are going to step up and hold that light through tough times. And be there, and like it's all about that, and how we can help lift each other up and help shine and not get lost and stay sovereign and stay, you know, in our own inner rule, you know, mentally, emotionally, in our heart. I think that's the ticket as we see the outer world start to make big changes. What is this? Oh, this is another chart that I want to bring up. This is probably the last chart I'm going to show, and I'm probably going to talk a little bit and kick rocks. I don't know how long I've been streaming, but how long have I been streaming for? About an hour? That's good. I don't want to sit here forever and waste your guys' time, or maybe you enjoy this. I don't know. I haven't looked at the chat, so I have no idea. Hopefully you guys are enjoying yourself a little bit, if anybody's in there. this is January 12th, 2020. This is a big deal because this is when we had Jupiter and Saturn and the Sun. I'm sorry, Saturn, Pluto, Jupiter was in there with the South Node. So this was like, and again, David Palmer, the Leo King, is a bad mother when it comes to astrology. And he called this out years ago, like that this was going to bring on some dark stuff and some hidden agenda stuff. And you look at it and it screams that with Capricorn. You know, it's in Saturn's home, in his house. He's got Jupiter there, just his son. You know, he's like, hey, Jupiter, you're going to follow my orders in my house, son. You're going to help me with these big plans. And Pluto's there with this like dark hidden agenda. So it's like this dark hidden agenda that, you know, you get Pluto and Saturn in Capricorn. It results in plagues usually. Pluto Saturn result usually brings up a plague. So, you know, you could have said there was going to be a plague coming, but this one's different because there's a bigger elitist power play behind it, but the South Node was there. So that's the beauty of it, is they're trying to convince us and get lost in this power play and in this system, but it's all an illusion and it's not going to work. And the light really does win in the end. So, but this is a big cycle. It's 33 years. We're not going to see a Saturn-Pluto conjunction again until Pluto's in Pisces in 2053. So this is like, there's a lot of energy that's kind of about these next 30 years, and like how we're going to get through it is we kind of have to be Capricornian. We have to be sharp. We have to, you know, we kind of have to get to the top of our own mountains and like figure shit out. But we can't get stuck in the illusion of hoping that the outer world's going to help us get to the top, because all that stuff is not true. And really, it's the opposite. They're trying to take you down their road, their path, their agenda. And that comes out too when you look at like the stuff that literally these people have put out, like with Agenda 2020 and the World Economic Forum. I mean, they literally post like, you will have nothing and like it. Like there's these weird dark plans out there, and you can go and, you know, do a lot of that research for yourself. Like I don't want to push all that, but it's not going to work. It's going to fail. But it was at 22 degrees, which is a very quantum degree. So it really did open up, I think, many, many doorways to how we can reach a lot within ourselves, and a lot of deep power, and a lot of have a lot of persistence to make it happen. So it's just like, it's going to take time, and we have to be smart, and we have to be sharp and dialed in and have our mission and our goals of what we want to accomplish right now lined up, or other people are going to make us a part of their mission and their goals. And that's kind of my spiel for that. But all in all, these eclipses are bringing a lot of change. We're in very mutable times. I think we've had a lot of divine guidance from Neptune in these squares, but it's been forcing it on us. It's like you have to get into your divine calling, and it's hard because it can put us into spells. It can put us into the media showing us the truth, which isn't the truth. Like, I'm sorry, but what you see on TV is not the truth. I hope that people watching this channel already know that. But for what it's worth, with this North Node here now in Gemini, and with pulling off the squares to Neptune and this eclipse, we might actually see some truth come out of the media. And now that makes it even harder to discern, because we've seen so much false come out, that now it's like you really have to discern. You really have to use your mind. You have to use your heart. And that's a lot of what this eclipse is bringing up with Mercury Cazimi. During it, it's a big deal. Like, our mind is getting all the truth from spirit that it could possibly handle right now, and we're going to start seeing more and more and more of it come out, and we have to put it into action in our own environments and for our own personal lives. And we have to, you know, get our emotions synced up with our mind too, so that we're not just getting emotionally manipulated, but we're thinking things through and being objective. Because you got to be smart in Gemini, and Saturn in Aquarius. You got to be smart right now too. In a time where we're in unstable reality with Uranus and Taurus. So I think that we really do see many changes when it comes to our monetary systems, our governments, and we're going to start to see these come now. We're going to start to see them start to play out over the next, even I bet the next 60 days with Mars and Leo, we see some big events come out. And, we talked about Biden a little bit. Interesting times, I wish him the best. I really do. It's curious to see all the stuff that he came into office with, just the way he looks health-wise when he talks. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know how he's even going to have a conversation with Putin. Putin's not like going to play around if it gets serious, and I know that there are disagreements right now, so we'll see what happens with that. So, and you know what? I just don't think Trump goes away either, which is a wild thing to say, but I found some of that story about Denard and what was his name? What was his name? Ahmed Abdallah coming back into office. Got taken out of office, couped, and then got put back in office by another coup. So, it's very uncertain times. And war comes up big too, and division. And we have to, still find our sense of like compassion. And I think that a lot of Neptune in Pisces right now has helped people come into their spiritual compassion for others, but still hold their line of their truth. And I think that that's a beautiful thing that we've been living through as well. So there's just a lot of duality. There is a split. There's people that want to go one way. There's people that want to go the other way. It's nobody's job to make somebody follow you. So that's the thing. If somebody is telling you to go do something or telling you that's the right thing to do, you really want to discern that for yourself. If that's what you want to do, don't just blindly follow anything. Like, use your mind. Use your hermeticism. And I would say that's the best thing we can do for ourselves right now. That's the winning energy that this eclipse is trying to bring out. And Mars is going to give us a lot of strength to act with courage, especially for our truth, in a time where, who knows? I mean, we could see extreme weather. We could see presidential office shifts. We could see anything. Uranus is the most unpredictable planet. If you thought about it, it likely won't show up. So even putting these out here, it's like, it's what I can look at the history and kind of like come to some sort of conclusion of what could possibly happen. But we're going to see changes that we never thought were possible, especially growing up. Like, who would have thought 3 years ago we would have been where we are right now? Saturn was in Sagittarius. It was a whole different world. Saturn came into Capricorn, started changing things, but the big one was that Saturn, Jupiter, and Pluto, Jupiter as well, meeting in Capricorn, because that really restricted our travel, that restricted a lot of things. So we're in this restrictive zone right now, but we're only restricted from this outer sort of thing, this outer world. Our environment is wide open right now. So the stuff that we can really change is close to us. So remember, if you want to make a change, it's close. It's stuff that you can physically, within a car drive, go do and make a change. So if you want to make change, like, do something in your community. Don't get caught up in the chaos that's likely going to ensue in the world. And don't get caught up in gurus either with the South Node and Sag telling you what to believe and what to value and what to do. So that's my spiel. That's my talk. I hope you enjoyed. I enjoyed putting this out here. Kind of a new thing. I've never really done this sort of presentation before, but it was fun. So, truly do love you all. I appreciate you. I hope that you have a blessed day, a blessed week. I hope that you're in your truth. I hope that you're able to discern with your mind and your heart and do the best things that are right for you and what's close to you right now. And what we start to see out in the world, because there's going to be things. If there's one thing I can tell you for sure, is there are going to be changes. There are going to be shocks. There are going to be ahs. But we look at that Sibley chart one more time. that 10 energy, before I go, is pretty amazing for that Pluto return, because that's I manifest. That's the I manifest degree. So this is where we can really have the power to manifest a new structure for ourselves, for the people, for the United States, possibly even for the bigger, parts of the world. Because the United States it really is a leader in many ways. So let's, be powerful within ourselves and get right, so that we can really manifest and create and come into the abundance that we do deserve and we do have an option to create, but it's just within you, and you have to alchemize that within yourself, and then you'll see it in your environment. Maybe not in the world, but in your environment. I love you all so much, and I'll catch you next time. Peace.